Peter, welcome to the Africa Growth Initiative at Brookings.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's nice to have you here. My first question to you, you used to be a lost boy of Sudan. Today you're a citizen of the Republic of South Sudan. Tell us about that journey. What was the most important lesson that you took from that extraordinary journey?
Well, the journey was a bit long from the day I first left South Sudan until coming back in 2009. It's a period of over 20 years in which I was mostly outside of the country. And it's a journey that took us going through Kenya to Ethiopia and then ending up here in the United States. And if I can think of the key takeaway from the entire journey, it just taught us to persevere, to hope, and a lot of determination, especially with what is my own responsibility as a citizen of South Sudan and as a lost boy. And that's the main reason why I decided to move back to South Sudan after I finished my education here in the United States.
And what have you found now that you've moved back to South Sudan? What has been the most important element of living there now?
Well, you see, South Sudan, as you very well know, is less than 1 year old country. It will just be 1 year old soon. And the need in the country, the effect of war after so many years, is a wounded society that is now beginning to recover and to rebuild itself, literally by brick to brick. And when I came back and saw all this need in the country, the lack of capacity, the lack of infrastructure, and all of these things, it just reminded me of my own obligations and my own story too, going through many different experiences all over the world, and then being able to take everything that I've learned and apply it to helping South Sudan.
Now, you've been involved in ethnic reconciliation in South Sudan between the Noors and the Dinkas and others. Tell us about that, how you've gone about that and what results you're seeing.
Yes, the main approach we took was the approach to use sport as a way to make reconciliation among people. As you very well know, the main sort of source of internal insecurity in South Sudan has always been cattle rustling. Now, a lot of tribes in South Sudan, they raise cattle as their daily living, and many other communities, they only farm. And literally, there's always been conflict between the pastoralists and the agriculturalists. And in the case of South Sudan, the conflict among the pastoralists themselves was getting out of control. It didn't used to be like that during the war, which was a terrible time in which a lot of things were happening. But immediately after the signing of the CPA, you see this surge in violence, tribes fighting each other, raiding cattle, and it went beyond even raiding cattle. Women and children were being killed, literally in cold blood. And what we asked ourselves is, what can we do to change this environment? And when you look at these youth who are committing these sort of issues, they are from rural areas. They are living in cattle camps. They have no other skills. They don't have any education. And we look at what do they have. And what they have is they wrestle. And this is indigenous South Sudanese wrestling. So we seize on that and form a wrestling league in which we put different tribes in each state into a team, and then we have them compete with different other tribes in other different states. So we did this big tournament in Juba, which we brought people from Eastern Equatoria, from Jonglei, from Central Equatoria, and Nuba Mountain, and Lake States. And all of these people, they came to Juba and they wrestled. And people met each other, people that were stealing cows from each other. They were committing a lot of atrocities to one another. So it has been really amazing to see the products from this sort of reconciliation. But we are following up because it's not just about wrestling. The issue here is access to economic opportunity because they don't have anything else. They're not producing much. So it needs to be complemented by other things like access to job, training, thinking about way to make this cattle industry productive, ways to increase agricultural productivity, and also with local governance too, making youth part of that governance process, designing institutions that will be able to mediate conflicts at the local level and create ways in which life could improve.
What is the most significant challenge that the government has to deal with?
Well, the main concern really is building the nation. Yes, we got the nation, but we have to build this nation. And we haven't learned from the last 6 years. We have learned a lot from the last 6 years, but if you look at the way in which the entire interim period went, there was a lot of issues that were not directly addressed. And these issues, they continue to grow, and as they grow, they become more complex. As we speak, South Sudan recently decided to shut down the oil production, which accounted for over 98% of government revenues, over 70% of GDP, nearly 100% of foreign exchange. And South Sudan, given the legacy of war, the level of production is very limited. People are not producing much. We only produce about 60% of our food that we consume. So we're dependent for import for over 40%. And having shut down the oil, like what is next? Right. And during the entire period also, if you look at the public sector, has been able to expand so much. Over 40% of our budget goes directly to wages, and then if you add in the allowances, and then you also look at this public sector, are they producing anything? Are they qualified? Are they thinking about the future? And the recent evaluation of the government of South Sudan confirmed that most of the civil service are unqualified. And we have to find a way in which we reform the civil service. But it's important to understand in the first place that the civil service was not set up to be a productive civil service. It was set up basically as a way to buy peace. And a lot of people were able to be put in that position so that we at least have a normal life. So reforming the public sector is going to be extremely important, particularly even if the oil is even turned on. Like in 2011, the annual expenditure per capita in South Sudan was $451. If you look in the region, Kenya is like $100 per person. But then if you look, what is the interaction of this government expenditures with actually the life of average people? And there hasn't been much. If you look at the roads that we have built, the FABE road that South Sudan has been able to build during the entire 6 years of interim period is less than 60 kilometers. If you look at what are the electricity, we have less than 40 megawatts in the country. So we have to think about this country that we are building. What is going to be the long-term growth prospect of the country? 80% of our population are engaged in agriculture, so this is a huge potential for the future, but it needs serious investment and it needs other things to be done that complements it. And this includes things like infrastructure. You need these farmers to have access to skills. You want to make sure that they have roads in which they can take their products to the market, that they have access to finance and capital, which is not there. But most importantly is actually the design of the state itself. We have a transition constitution, and we are about to start a process of making a permanent constitution. And it's extremely important for this process to be inclusive so that all the voices of South Sudanese participate in this process. We have a nation of 63 ethnic groups, and some of them are big, like Dinka, nearly 50% of the entire country. But you have some other tribes that are less than 0.01% of the country. So how do you create a nation in which all this diversity is accommodated, and you have a situation in which you have a mutual conciliation of South Sudanese people? You also have a very young nation. Over 70% of the people are less than the age of 31. These people are not engaged directly in the leadership. How do you make sure the youth participate? Same thing with women. If you look in the referendum, over 55% of the voters were women. And we have a country that has been neglected for a very long time. And how do we make this group productive and have access to resources? We have a lot of orphans, a lot of single mothers whose husband died during the war. So all of this is very important, especially when we design this constitution, to make sure that all the people of South Sudan participate in it. And we look at the diversity of South Sudan and think of ways in which we can achieve mutual conciliation.
Yeah. With all those challenges you identified, some would say that, some have said that the decision by the government to stop production of the oil and to forego all that 97% of foreign exchange is crazy. Doesn't make any sense. How is the government going to get the revenues that it needs to invest in schools and invest in hospitals and to build the roads? And is there a danger at some point in the future that there might be a backlash of people saying, look, we've got our freedom, but there's been no freedom dividend?
Well, there is a genuine concern there, especially To most people, it seemed the decision by the government of South Sudan to shut down the oil was abrupt and wasn't probably thought in detail. But if you look at the circumstances at time, yes, the oil was flowing, but it was flowing to the north. It was not entering the world markets for the benefit of South Sudanese. It was being held there in Khartoum. So what could South Sudanese do? And this was from a 3-month period. So ultimately, South Sudan has no other choice but to shut down the oil. But the interesting thing about this is that the shutdown of the oil is actually a blessing in disguise, because if you look the entire time, we're just spending money. We are unable to build any institutions. We are unable to think deeper about how we can diversify the economy, make it a people-centered economy. We were unable to do that with all that oil money. So the argument that you shut down the oil and how you're going to be building a school, well, we were not building that many in the first place, because if you look in the basic services, 80% of the expenditures were being covered by the donors, and government was covering less than 20% of that, and it was just mostly wages for like teachers and health workers. So in the long run, this forces the government of South Sudan to actually implement these sort of reforms that are overdue, that need to be done. So it's a blessing in the disguise. But at the same time, South Sudan will need help. It needs to be assisted. We have a lot of challenges. We don't have institutions that are robust. We have a political system that is coming from the military, in which there is a lot of loyalty, and people don't really disagree that much. Although there is a level of people exchange ideas, but at the end of the day, it's a military system. So transforming that is difficult. At the same time, the capacity limitations are huge. So the shutdown of the oil actually allows us to soul search. What are we going to do once we turn back the oil? What sort of rules that are going to govern it? The same thing with public expenditures. Yes, we made budgets, but if you look at all of this budget, the budget plans and the actual budget outturns are completely different. It's like day and night. So everything that we plan is not what we implement. So now it gives us time in which we think about laying foundation for this institution. But in the meantime, we will need support in which we can actually do investment that is targeted to areas that will allow South Sudan, especially its huge potential, the agriculture, to grow in the long run.
And as South Sudan celebrates its first anniversary, what are you most proud of that the country has accomplished?
Just the way where we have got so far is something that is beyond what we dreamt of when we were children. I remember when we were in the Red Army, which gave birth to the Lost Boy. Yeah. We used to sing all these songs about the future, and it seems then is something that is ideal, probably will never happen within our lifetime, and maybe we'll pass it on to our children. But it was a determination that everybody was willing to sacrifice something for, and the fact that we achieve it, that South Sudan is a country and is on the map and is a sovereign nation pursuing its own destiny, is something that we are most proud of. Just being able to be a country and achieving that, and knowing that we made the sacrifice, over 2 million of our citizens died for us to be a nation. And looking back through that journey, it's a great joy.